Hey, let's get going. In this presentation, I'm going to start with kind of some management techniques, recruiting department management stuff, and then we're going to get into a little bit of recruiting technique stuff that you can implement, and then also talk about retention. And I've got 45 minutes to do what I usually do in an hour and 15. So I'm going to talk fast, you listen fast, and we'll all be good. The very first thing, talking about recruiting department structure. If you're large enough that you have more than one recruiter, and you're the type of fleet that has more than one type of driver that you're recruiting, here's a silver bullet for you. Assign primary recruiting responsibilities. Let's say you had 3 recruiters and you wanted owner-operators, company drivers, and students. I would assign you're my primary owner-operator recruiter, you're my primary company driver recruiter, and you're my primary student recruiter. And now, so when the call comes in, and if it's a student, then you're the one that takes it. If it's an owner-operator, you're the one that takes it. Now, by the way, if the owner-operator recruiter's on the phone, then the company driver recruiter backs them up. And what happens is it creates a sense of ownership and pride. And it's a pain. When you really think about it, it's harder to recruit an owner-operator than it is a company driver, than it is a student. And when I worked with larger fleets that have all 3 types of drivers, and the recruiting director and the president are saying, Kelly, we're getting tons of students, but we need more of these. I make this shift, and immediately they come up, like we need them to come up. And for the larger fleet, you know, we look at how many company drivers you need, how many students you need, how many owner-operators you need, and then we staff accordingly. And guys, there's several documents I'm glad to give you. If after this presentation you give me your business card and say, dude, give me those documents, I'll send you an email and load you up with this stuff. I've got a graph that shows how many recruiters do you need, how many processors do you need based on the number of drivers that you need. And so I'll share with that. I've got all sorts of analytic stuff I'm glad to give you. So the other is remove distractions. You know, it doesn't matter if you're selling cars, selling real estate, selling widgets, or hiring drivers, which is a sales job. If a salesperson has a job function that distracts them from selling, it will. I've been in recruiting departments, and the phone is ringing over here, and the recruiter is putting together orientation packets. And I'm like, hey, what's that phone I hear? Oh, that's the recruiting line. I'll get it in a minute. And we've been hearing all day long, you don't want to get that in a minute. You want to get it right now. So they're letting applicants go while we're stapling paper. Let's put the stapling paper onto somebody else or do it after prime recruiting times. So if you can, don't have your recruiters doing anything other than recruiting. I don't have a long time to get into this, but when you think about your driver need, many companies say, I got a recruiter. And this person takes the calls, they work the applications, they set them up for orientation, and they rinse and repeat. Well, I need some more drivers. I'll hire another recruiter. Actually, what I would do is hire a processor. Get the recruiter off of processing, which is the clerical function, and keep them on recruiting. And you'll see that this productivity comes up. Here's the other beautiful thing. You're training a recruiter. Because when this recruiter's on the phone, the processor takes the call. So when you need another recruiter, then you have 2 recruiters. And then you add another processor. And productivity keeps going up. That's what that graph that I'll give you shows. Here's something else. I used to have every morning at 5 minutes till 8. It was before we started. It was actually 10 minutes till 8 because at 8 o'clock, we didn't come into work to start working at 8. We went to work at 8. At 10 minutes till 8, we had our 5-minute stand-up morning meeting. And in that meeting, we would talk about, we'd go around the table. And each recruiter would go, I've got this many on the list, this many more possible. This many on the list, this many more possible. Boom, boom, boom. All 8 of my recruiters went around. Processors were there too. Didn't really have much to say. But if they did, they did. And then I would say, okay, folks, we've got this many in orientation. We've got this many empty trucks. We're going to fill this many trucks, which means we will net this many trucks. And for next week, we've got this many that are already confirmed and this many more possible. And then I'd share any other company news and also our turnover rate. And then all right, let's go hire drivers, and then we'd head out. Here's what happened. the day I left, regrettably, the person that took my position, much to my, what's the word? I'm at a verb. I didn't like it. I already had people hired to take my position. He stopped that morning meeting. I called back 6 months later, and several recruiters got on the phone, and they're like, hey, Kelly, so here's our empty truck count, here's our turnover. And I said, guys, what bothers me, Jerry said, I went and got those numbers. And I said, what bothers me is three things. You said you had to go get those numbers, and number 2 and 3, what those numbers are. And their answer was, ever since you left, nobody shares these numbers with us, and it doesn't seem that they even care. Folks, one of the common denominators that I see, no matter who I work for, from a consulting standpoint, is if people don't know the numbers, then they have high turnover rate, high empty trucks, low productivity. How can we expect our employees to help us manage a number that they don't know exists? Matter of fact, a book that I'd highly recommend, I wish I'd have found it years ago, is called The Great Game of Business, and they talk about open book management. And I realize that as a recruiter, you're not going to be able to do full open book management at your company. You might influence your boss with it, but there's things that you can take away about how you would set goals and communicate that with your staff so that they can be engaged with you in accomplishing the goals that you have in front of you. If you're not sharing those numbers with your staff, please start doing it right away. Something else, and this was just an absolute shocker to me, we were ISO 9000 certified. And folks, the we I'm talking about, if people know my background, I was in the Coast Guard, and heavy weather search and rescue, federal law enforcement. I was an engineer, that's how I gained rank and all that. But I didn't want to be 65 years old sitting on the porch one day wondering, what if I drove truck? And CFI out of Joplin had mistakenly ran an ad the Saturday that I picked, or Sunday that I picked up the Portland Oregonian newspaper, and that's where I went to work as a truck driver. And then became a driver finisher, then a driver recruiter and safety supervisor, safety manager, and ultimately had the responsibility of director of safety without the title or the pay. Anybody else, their company does that? Shows you can do the job before we give you the title and pay. But I left CFI 25 years ago when I started KA Group. So we were ISO 9000 certified. And part of our process of onboarding people is that they had to go, from a recruiting standpoint, I set forth that they had to sit through orientation, and then they would sit in every different department in the company, the different departments within safety, in operations, out to maintenance, and up to payroll, because then they got a full idea. We had to sell the company, so this was a great way for them to get to know the company. Well, a couple of things happened. One is recruiters that we were training, they'd do all that, and then they'd come sit, in recruiting and learn how to recruit. And they came back and they're like, hey, by the way, you guys are saying we do this, but they're doing that. What happened was they changed the policy and didn't tell us. So that was a way for us to find out things that had changed that we didn't know about. So then I thought, well, this is such a great idea. I'm going to send my other staff through this. And so I started running my other recruiters through this that have been with us for years even. And here is when I got absolutely blown away. They came back and said, wow, now I see how we fit in the company. Folks, I was absolutely blown away. What do you mean you don't know how we fit in the company? But when you think about it, how many of your staff, whether they're working in recruiting or safety or operations, they came in one door and interviewed in that department and then left? And now they're working and they've come in that door and they're working in that department and they've left and they've never walked across the parking lot and seen the maintenance department. Folks, how can we say that we're all on the same team if we don't even know how we fit in this team, how we contribute to the success of the team? So I hope that just from a management level, folks, make sure that you've had your opportunity to go around and really see how you contribute to the company and how you fit in it, and then get it done with your team as well. What a difference it made in our contribution to the success of the company and reaching our goals. So let's shifting gears from come to management. I can go all day long on management leadership stuff, but we got 45 minutes. So here we go. Talking about advertising. One of the things we talk about is fishing. Where do you find your drivers? What I really love about Turning Point and CDLLife is the fact that they pull it all together. And they work very closely with ad agencies as well. So you have an ad agency, this is probably part of a plan that your ad agency is going to bring with you and help to manage with these type of services, but then also with some of the other things that the ad agencies are going to pull together and build for you, like landing pages and websites and creative, different things like that. Well, it's amazing when you think about a one-stop shop that they can help you with your social media, your search engine optimization, your aggregator sites, and also the community. And they've got the largest community of anybody. Now, obviously, you guys believe in it or you wouldn't be at their conference. I just think that's absolutely amazing. So I don't need to really elaborate on this, except for the fact you've got a one-stop shop that can help you pull all this together, and as a strategic partner with your ad agency, which is also your strategic partner. But if you're going to be on social media and doing Google, search engine optimization and such, you've got to have a place to send applicants. Well, and when you think about Facebook, we need to have the Facebook page, but you've got to have content on that page. And I have to admit, I am not a big Facebook person. I've got a page and I rarely go out there. I usually do it to go spy on somebody I'm thinking about, but that's about it. I have people though. I've hired a person, and that's her full-time job is to drive content. And if you're in our database, you get our newsletter now. You may get notifications of the content that Skyla puts out on our Facebook page. Thinking about driver retention, create a Facebook page for the spouses of your drivers, or maybe that's a members-only page. And it gives you a place to proactively engage with the drivers. I think about, we had our spouse support group, and once a month they would come in and have a meeting. And here's what I found: the people that were involved in the spouse support group, those drivers never quit our company. Shame on me for not realizing that more when I was head of recruiting and retention. Why didn't I support that group more? Why didn't I grow it to all of our different terminals? I missed that boat, folks. There's some things you learn with age, and as you reflect, I should have done that, and I'm just giving it to you. Take that out of this meeting, and at a minimum, you could have meetings at your terminals for them, but at a minimum, you can have a Facebook page to engage with the spouses and support them and pull that community together. And hey, sometimes you're going to get some bad information out there. Answer it. Don't take it down, answer it. But what's really cool is when you don't answer it, but your drivers answer it. Because sometimes somebody stupid will put something stupid out there. That's what stupid people do. I use stupid 3 times in less than 10 seconds. That's great. I can do that here, but at home they're like, Kelly, I'm not saying that. Anyway, but what's really great is when your drivers then say, hey, listen, and they answer it. Just sit back and let them take care of it, FYI. So landing pages. And hopefully everybody in the room knows what a landing page is, but I'll hit it nice and short. You ought to have a landing page for every different type of job you're trying to recruit for. They're cheap to make, and I know one fleet's got like hundreds of them. They're a very large fleet. But for every different job that they have a different landing page. So when they're advertising, that advertisement is pointed to that landing page. We're not taking somebody interested in a job and throwing them into a mall and say, find the shoe store down here. We're taking them and dropping them in the shoe store in front of the shoe that they're looking for. There's the data specifically that they're looking for. Now, the landing page will have some high-level information, but have it enabled where they can click for more information. Because you do have some analytical people that want lots of information, so we need to have that enabled. But I find that a lot of people, when it comes to searching the internet, we all have ADD. We want it really fast. Give it to me high level. So your landing page does that. They can click for more information. But you've got to have a way for the drivers to contact you how they want to contact you. You need to have an 800 number on there. Well, not necessarily 800 anymore, but you've got to have a phone number on there. You need to have, for sure, a mini application on there. And then a link for the full application as well. I work a lot with Ramsey Media Works, and Matt and I were working with the fleet, and this fleet wanted to take down their mini app, and they did, and their lead just went through the floor. Put it right back on there, and boom, the leads came right back, and the hires came back with it. It's that, if you're going to have one thing on that page, I'm going to have the micro app on there, which basically give me your name, your address, your phone number, and none of those fields are required, and your email. None of those fields are required. And have that where it comes to you real time, so that when you get that lead, you can turn right around and respond to that lead. The other is through your landing pages, you can put phenomenal analytics on those landing pages and see where the leads are coming from, where they went, what they did, and it helps you with a lot of the tracking that we've been talking about here. Helps you with that tracking. And folks, you know, with my recruiters, I used to tell them every day, you know, you've got to track your advertising. When you're talking to somebody, ask them how they heard about the company. And Julie Ramsey would bring me a report, and it'd show that we got 75 phone calls for the week. And I'd be like, 75? So I'd give the speech to the recruiters again. And, oh, I know, Kelly. So finally, at one speech, when I got the report from her, she gave me a report every week. And I finally said, well, folks, I said, we've been talking about tracking advertising, and have you guys been doing that? Have you been asking? And they were like, oh, yeah. Okay, that's okay, cool. Well, we've only got 75 phone calls last week, and I'll just be honest with you, I don't need 8 of you to take 75 calls. In those days, it was calls, by the way. I don't need 8 of you to work the 75 leads here, so I'm going to start out with voluntary resignations, and then we'll see where we end up. May have to let a couple of you go. This was at the 5-minute morning meeting. And they're like, oh, wait a minute, no, we've got way more. And I said, I know we had way more. But you're not tracking them. And if we're not tracking our advertising, all we're doing is throwing money out the window. I had taken a $100 bill and gotten $5 bills, 20 of them. See, that's like $100 and 5. It's math. Yeah, okay. I said that because Matt might be in the audience. Anyway, and so I had to help him out with those things. Threw those across the table, and we're just throwing money out the window. Now I have to tell you a real quick story. I was raised in San Angelo, Texas, and my dad, every now and then we get the electric bill, and Dad would call us all into the kitchen for the electric bill speech. I don't know if you ever had those. And I mean, the speech I remember the most is the one where he's like, son, when you're in the refrigerator, get what you want and get out. Don't be standing with your head in the refrigerator. Girls, you got every light in the house on. Kids, in or out, not in and out. All we're trying to do is cool off all of South Texas. This was San Angelo, Texas. By the way, Paul Harvey came out years later and said San Angelo, Texas was the highest kilowatt per hour fee in the country. It was probably good I didn't know that during the speech. But anyway, at the crescendo of the speech, my dad threw the window above the kitchen sink open. All we're doing is throwing money out the window. And us kids like, ooh, and went outside and found all the money and get back to Dad. Okay, guys, I'm just going to put it out there. You probably already figured it out. I just got to be real about it. I may be a little slow. I mean, I'm 58 now. I guess I was probably about 40 years old, and I was doing a seminar once, and I was telling this story, and in the back of my mind, it dawned on me. He took the screen off. So I got home from that seminar, I ran over to Mom and Dad's house, I said, you took the screen off. And Dad said, what are you talking about? I said, the electric bill speech in San Angelo. You took the screen off. He said, well, of course I did, son. It doesn't have the same effect if the money comes bouncing in back after you. So, FYI, you can use that. Take the screen off, though, like Dad. But you are. Seriously, if you're not tracking your advertising, if you're not tracking your sources, all you're doing is throwing money out the window. And the worst thing that you can do as recruiting director is cancel advertising that's working for you. All right. Another, referrals. Let's talk about referrals for a second. The silver bullet for getting referrals is asking drivers personally and privately for their help. If you ask in general, hey, in orientation, hey guys, we pay a referral bonus. It's $1,000. We give you a $250 when the guy signs on. We give it $250 later, and then we get $250 or $500 at the end of the year. Well, first off, I think that's not structured right. And number two, they didn't take it personal. You want a silver bullet? You who recruited the driver and the fleet manager, get them involved in it. Ask the driver personally and privately for their help with driver referrals. My recommendation on referral bonus is pay what you can pay and be done with it. Look at your advertising cost per hire. Literally, is it $500, $600, $1,200? Then figure out what you're willing. This is advertising. Maybe you don't give $1,200, maybe you only give $600. But when the driver refers that driver and you hire them, give them their $600 and say, go get me another one. And be done with it. Your accounting department will love you for it, and your drivers will love you for it. Here's something else. Get some prizes. I was at a fleet, and they had a leather jacket. And it was a very nice leather jacket. And it had the company name all embroidered on there and the driver's name on it. And folks, you can't buy that leather jacket. And what's that leather jacket cost? It was like $300. You could win it when 3 drivers that you referred were hired. There's an idea for you. It got a lot of buzz, and a lot of people wanted to earn that leather jacket. Some companies will give a $50 gift certificate for every driver you refer. You refer a driver, they do a full-blown application, I'll give you a gift card. There's a couple ideas for you. But the biggest deal is asking personally and privately for their help. That's how you get people to do it. Rehires. Folks, this is one of the biggest areas that people mess up on. When a driver quits you, decide right then, do you want them back? When I was head of recruiting at CFI, I went to my boss because we had a rehire program. And we'd have to send this entire rack full of applications around to the different safety managers in the safety department, and everybody would vote on rehire. I finally went to Bruce and I said, Bruce, if you can trust me to hire drivers we don't know, can't you trust me to rehire drivers we do know? He says, you got a point, okay, fine. So I became the rehire review board. I was the person, the other policy was, hey, you hired them, you walk them out. So whether it was voluntary or involuntary, I had to do those talks. And I would try to save drivers from quitting. I would decide right then, do I want this person back? If I saw something in their file that didn't quite look right, then I'd call the department to find out what that was about. And I'd make like a referral, you're like a employment verification. And I would decide right then. I had one recruiter. Now folks, we had 2,000 trucks. So this was a full-time job for one recruiter. If you're at 100 trucks, it's just one of those things that you do. But I'm telling you, it's a gold mine. I've been doing this for 25 years as KA Group, and people that do this always tell me, Kelly, it works just like you say it works. Decide if you want them back right when they quit. 30 days later, send them a rehire letter. I will give you a rehire letter, and you can tweak it and make it your own. The first paragraph is, hey, sorry to heard you leave. The magic of this letter is the third paragraph and the timing. Because the third paragraph says, listen, if it doesn't work out where you're at, give us a call. A simple telephone call could get you back in XYZ truck where you belong. So it removes the fear of rejection, and it hits them. 75% of turnover happens in the first 90 days of employment. It hits them right there in that trough. And they find out, you know what, I made a mistake. And they call you and come back. And if they come back before a certain amount of time, they don't even have to go through orientation. Guys, there's a gold mine for you. And most people, when drivers quit, they don't even go after them. Or they wait till the driver calls and then they vote on it. If you do like I just said, you'll have a high quality, high quantity, and low turnover rate. If you wait till they call you, then you're going to have a low quality, a low quantity, and a high turnover rate. So, did I say low turnover rate on the first one? I hope I didn't say something wrong. Low turnover rate when you go after them. Guys, I'm a rehire. See, I quit CFI after working for them for 1 year. Said, you didn't pay me what you said you're going to pay me. You didn't treat me right either. I was wrong on both sentences. 6 months later, I got this letter. Hey, if you want to come back. I was, oh, that's interesting. Threw it away. 9 months later, I walked into the Coke plant where I was a local route driver, and they said, Kelly, it's March, and winter's going long, and you're the newest guy. We got to cut your hours until sales go back up. At 10 a.m. that morning, I never even thought to look at any of your advertising. Sorry. Because I remembered a rehire letter. I dialed 1-800-CFI-DRIVE, and the rest is history. That's the power of the rehire letter. Hey, another group, those that you wanted that disappeared. Most recruiters, they're hunting somebody, and then they'll call, and they don't answer, and so they just go on down the road. 30 days later, send the took other employment letter. It separates you from the crowd that they were talking to when they were looking for a job. And if it doesn't work out where they're at, they'll remember you separate from everybody else. And they'll call. You've already done the work. You've already got the application. They're already sold. You probably already verified the employment, except for this last little bit. And they're already sold, and all you got to do is update it and put them in orientation. It's another gold mine that a lot of recruiters miss out on. So have a strategy of urgency. And I've got to step on this. This is real hard to do. Have a strategy of urgency. You know, the first thing we got to realize is drivers would rather be eating, sleeping, spending time with their family, driving, or playing games rather than talking to recruiters. So every single time the phone rings, we need to have two goals in mind. Your recruiters need to give that driver every reason in the world to stop calling other recruiters and get on a plan of action with you. Because if they don't have a reason to stop making phone calls, they're going to keep making phone calls. You all agree with me on that? By the way, I didn't put this out earlier. I'm like an evangelist. You throw out amen. I talk faster. We get done sooner. Amen. Appreciate that, brother. Okay. So you know, instill that urgency into your recruiters that when you talk to this person, give them every reason in the world to get on a plan of action with you. And we're going to talk about how to do that in just a minute. Number two, make them ours until such time as we decide that we don't want them, and there are those that you don't want. What I find is the longer it takes you from hello until, man, John, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we couldn't take this next step. Matter of fact, sounds like you'd want to be in orientation on the 21st. If you're right, he says yes. If you're wrong, he'll go, well, not the 21st. When's your next one? The 28th. Okay, that works. Okay, so we're going to shoot for the 28th. Most recruiters could be replaced, and you don't even need AI to get rid of most recruiters. Because what do most recruiters do? Every single phone call is exactly the same. Hey, I want a few hiring drivers. We sure are. Well, what can you tell me about it? Well, where do you live? Do you have any tickets? Do you have any accidents? How much experience do you have? Well, if everything you're telling me is true, I've got blah, 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 blah. See, they got a thing called an interactive voice response system where we can put those things on there, yes and no's, and if you're good, then we'll give you the spiel. But guess what we find out? A company tried those, and they like 90% of the people hung up. People don't want to be treated that way. But folks, if that's all your recruiters are doing, they can be replaced by that system. But what we need is real recruiters talking to real people, having a conversation. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Having a real conversation about their real needs and talking about how you can meet those needs. And in doing that, you're building this relationship. But at the end of this phone call, I'm going to say, man, John, based on what I'm seeing here, I'm not going to call him a liar. Based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we couldn't take this next step. Matter of fact, sounds like you'd want to start on the blank date. Would you all agree with me that if they hang up with you and they got a target orientation date, so they've got a reason to stay engaged because, hey, my needs are going to get, I like what they said, they've got what I need, and we're working toward an actual date. See, most recruiters hang up and are like, yeah, well, if you're interested, go to our website, fill out our application, and we'll give you a call back someday. There's a big difference between a target orientation date and an ambiguous follow-up time. We'll talk more about that in a second. So I want on the very first phone call to set a plan of action, because I find the longer it takes you to get to where you show commitment, the lower the quality of driver you get to recruit. Because the good ones don't have to wait. We know that if you'll, sense of urgency, if you answer within 5 minutes, you're 90% more likely to recruit the driver. I thought that was interesting what Bobby said. If you call within 2 minutes, it freaks them out. I thought that was I was like, ooh, that's interesting. So I'm going to start tracking that one hard. But don't let it go over 5 minutes if you don't answer live in the first place. Of course, the number one leads that we get aren't phone calls, they're leads. So get the lead, answer it within 5 minutes is my rule. But not within 2. I'm going to have to check that one out. That was interesting. If somebody does call in, we find most people hang up on voicemail. Over half of people do that. Here's another thing. If your recruiters are not empowered with clearly defined hiring criteria, meaning they have to take their application to safety for approval, they won't close. When I train recruiters, I tell them, if you take an application to safety for approval and they shoot that application down, shame on you. This is not about throwing stuff against the wall to see what sticks. This is about, I brought this application to you because I believe they meet our criteria. Now, folks, I hope that if you have where safety has to give approval before your recruiters can offer a contingent offer, FYI, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I'm not saying safety ought not have approval. What I'm saying is set clearly defined hiring criteria. And if the driver's within those criteria, let's set a target orientation date. If they're outside of that criteria, cut bait and move on. I mean, if they don't fit today but they will in the future, then diary it for the future for you to follow up with them. Don't tell the driver to call you in the future. They're going to forget about you in about 6 seconds. You follow up with them when that diary comes up. If they're on the fence and you think they ought to be in the fence, then let's talk about that real quick and get them in the fence. But don't have if you can, do not have a policy wherein recruiters can't talk about a specific orientation date as a target without first getting safety approval. It will absolutely shoot you in the foot. So let's talk about recruiting techniques. The very first thing is having a conversation instead of an interrogation. I already demonstrated, got any tickets, got any accidents, got any, how much experience do you have, where do you live? Well, if everything you're telling me is true, blah. I already talked about that. That is what most recruiters do. Here's the other thing, just to be honest with you. I'm always honest. I don't care what the truth is, by the way. I just want the truth, and I hope you're the same way. Most recruiters are only recruiting the drivers that want to be recruited, meaning the ones that keep pounding them, keep calling back. It's not about them being on a... Here's a way to get over that. Because when you look at 10th Street's a phenomenal driver reach, phenomenal. I mean, there's some great ATS systems out there, but look at the inbox. Go back and look at the inbox on your ATS. And look, your recruiter has 3,000 leads over there. And what are they doing? They're cherry picking. Whoever's calling, oh, I think this, I think that. We need to update our notes, update the status of that application, and diary it for follow-up, so we are very purposeful on every single application that we're working. I'm all about, I have a recruiting department. We recruit for fleets. And we have a spreadsheet for every different fleet. And when we give a target orientation date, the driver goes on that spreadsheet. So the recruiter, at a glance, can see their pipeline and see who's red, who's yellow, who's green, who's whatever color, which is an indication of their status. We do that so it's a visual. You could do that in your department, not taking anything away from an ATS. If your ATS will do that, that's cool, where everybody can see it. But what we have found is when you put that name on that date on that spreadsheet and now they can see it, they want to make sure that that thing is done by that date because I want that guy in orientation. It's a really cool way to keep track of the pipeline. But having a conversation. Kelly Anderson Group Recruiting, this is Kelly, can I help you? That was kind of weird. How about Impact Transportation, this is Kelly, can I help you? That's better. Yeah, I wonder if he's hiring drivers. Yeah, we sure are. Who am I talking to? Oh, this is John. Hey, John, appreciate you calling. By the way, how'd you hear about us? Oh, I saw you on that Google ad, the CDLLife. Okay, cool. All right. Well, tell me a little about yourself, John. Where you been working? What you been doing? That's my jump off if without being influenced by outside forces, meaning him going, I wonder what your hiring criteria is. My follow-up question is, when do you get out? I'm just kidding. Okay, you guys will catch that in just a minute. By the way, you cannot, I hope you know this, EEOC Title VII, disparate impact. You cannot have a blanket policy related to criminal convictions. Meaning, oh, well, you've had a felony in the last 10 years, we can't hire you. Get ready to write a fine. Write a big old check for that deal. You can't have, if you don't know about that, holler at me and I'll give you another little more about it and then probably tell you to talk to your attorney. But you cannot have a blanket policy about criminal convictions, whether it's misdemeanor or felony. You've got to be able to prove a business connection between that conviction and that job. And if there is no connection, even if they get out next week, you better take the application or get ready to write a check. There's a whole bunch of fleets in New York got to write a check for that. Anyway, back to my deal. Tell me a little more about that was free. That was a little sidestep. Please add 30 seconds back to my time. Tell me a little about yourself, where you've been working, what you've been doing. Their answer to that will always tell you if there's an experienced driver, an owner-operator, or a student driver. Well, I've been driving for the last 15 years. I'm working over here at Bubba's, and it's not working out. Oh, really? Well, how long have you been there? Why it's not working out? Well, I've been there for about a year and a half, but man, the miles have been down. We're hearing a lot of that right now. The miles have been down, but the straw that broke the camel's back is I needed to be home for my son's game. They got me home all right, midnight. We're having a conversation. And what I say next depends on what he says. And then I show a little empathy about missing the son's game. Then I talk to him about our job and the fact that we've got plenty of freight and our drivers are averaging this much per week. I don't talk about pay per mile. People don't care what they make per mile. What they care about is what am I going to make? So I always talk about what they're going to make this week. Talk about the home time. And when you start talking about what they're interested in, they're going to be like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. That's better than I've got now. Well, I like that. Re-engage, ask them about the next job. Shift gears, talk about their safety. And based on what you're seeing here, they've got the experience. They're interested because you're talking about what they're interested in, and they're going, wow, that sounds good. And then you should be the first to show acceptance by saying, man, John, based on what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we couldn't take this next step. Matter of fact, sounds like you'd want to start on the 21st. All in the first phone call. Now, here's what we got to do to get there. Now, a little sidestep. Guys, look for an opportunity to show appreciation. If somebody tells me that they were in the military, I'm going to say, hey, you know what? Stopping right here. Regardless of whether it goes any further or not, I want to thank you for your service. All right, real quickly. How many Air Force? Stand up for a second. Air Force. Come on, be proud. Woo! There you are. Thank you. All right, Army, stand up for a second. Aha! Look at this. Look at that. The military knows about hiring women. Cool deal. What you got? I want to talk more. Marines. There you are. Yes. Navy. I don't blame you. Yeah, I don't blame you. I wouldn't be there either. Okay, how many Coast Guard? I was tall enough to be in the Coast Guard. I can walk back to shore. Thank you very much. You know, thank you so much for the service of all of our veterans in the room. You know, I'm going to show specific and genuine appreciation for a moment to those folks. And then we're going to go on. Humor, if you find something to laugh with them about, interject that. If you're asked a question and you don't know the answer to it, say, you know what, hang on a second, let me get somebody on the phone for that. Or dial over to HR or whomever or maintenance. Hey, can you help me? John had this question. Oh, yeah, sure. Hey, Bill, this is Kelly. I got John on the phone. He had this question. Oh, okay, yeah, boom. And answer the phone call. I wish I had more time to tell you some real life stories about this. Guys, that takes your recruiting call to a whole nother level and builds trust and strengthens that relationship. Your competitors aren't doing that. Your competitors are going, well, I think it's a 9-speed. And you got them on the phone and you know specifically what that transmission is. So that builds trust. Be the first to show acceptance. Most recruiters, most salespeople don't close the deal because they don't ask for the close. Recruiters need to ask for the close. Be the first to show acceptance. But by the way, what I'm seeing here, I don't see any reason we can't take this next step. Matter of fact, you want to be here on the 21st? That's a soft close. Create an action plan. So John, we're working toward the 21st. Here's what I need. I need to get a full-blown application to you. Let me email this application to you. And so you're going to fill that out and send it back. Call me tomorrow at 10 a.m. That's the other thing, folks. You tell them when to call you. Don't tell them, don't tell them you're going to call them, because you aren't going to call them, because you're too busy to call them. Load your phone full of people that have taken an action step and are calling you back. And then have the driver manager call the applicant the Thursday before orientation. One of the leading causes of driver turnover is a driver manager or dispatcher driver relationship. Well, there is no relationship there. But what if the dispatcher calls the driver this Thursday to say, hey, John, I understand you'll be in orientation on Monday. I'm going to be your dispatcher. I just wanted to give you a call and say hello. That's how you improve your show rate, big time, and improve your retention as well. Man, okay. He's already standing over here if you haven't noticed. So, and retention stuff, I got to tell you a couple of things. If he starts to pull me off and you don't want him, boom him down, okay? Okay. Guys, I'm going to tell you, I do a thing called undercover trucker. I still have a full-blown CDL and all that stuff. And so companies hire me, and I'll go through orientation undercover as a driver. And here's some things that have happened in orientation. Number one, I can tell you, in 25 years, had I not tried to get hired, I would not have been hired. And when I call in, I've got 25 years with the same company, no tickets, no accidents, and no DOT violations. And the only reason I'm changing is because my mother-in-law, she's not doing well. And my wife we got to move to take care of mother-in-law. That's my story. And it works every time. But guys, with that type of track record, I never get called back. I'll call and have an initial phone call, do an application, and never get called back. Why? Because recruiters are cherry picking. It's not until I call to try to get hired that I actually get hired. The Thursday before, Thursday or Friday phone call, typically I can hear it in their voice. The reason I'm calling you is to make sure you're going to show up. You can hear that they're used to people not showing up. Be careful what you telegraph when you're making that phone call to confirm them for orientation. Let's assume they're going to show up and talk in terms of them showing up. Check out your orientation lodging. Your hotel that you did that deal with might have shown you the rooms in the front, but they're putting your drivers in the rooms in the back. Check that out. Orientation classroom. Many orientation classrooms I go through will have plastic chairs because the drivers tear them up. But the driver's got to sit in that chair for a week. Or they're nicer office chairs, but they were nice until your chairs broke, and then you went to orientation and stole those chairs. So when I do my debrief with executive management, I usually have them sit in orientation, and as a result, after about 2 hours of listening to my, this is what you did and what you should do and all that, they're sitting there squirming in the chairs, and that's usually my last point is, and they get in these chairs the next day. Your orientation schedule and your curriculum. Guys, after 3 o'clock, they're brain dead. They're done. I mean, people have us getting up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to get drug tests and physical and different things, and at 3 o'clock, they want to talk about hours of service. You're wasting your breath. After 3 o'clock, I'm going to have them up and moving around. Maybe it's time for a tour. Maybe that's a good time to assign the truck on the first day, not the last day. At some point during orientation, let's have the fleet manager. What if fleet managers or driver dispatchers met their drivers Monday morning in the lobby, showed them around, got them a cup of coffee, and took them to orientation? Instead of letting them come in and find their own way, let's treat them like real people. Let's treat them like we would one of you if I hired you to come to work for my company. I'm going to meet you at the door. I'm paraphrasing, but I think you're getting it. Here's a question. Do your instructors even like drivers? I was physically assaulted in orientation by a safety director. Here's what happened. Now, this was a large fleet. There were 35 people in orientation, and they had a truck driving championship difficult road test. 7 of us did not wreck the truck in the backing test, and I was one of them. That would be embarrassing. And so the orientation instructor, a lady that kind of keeps things on flow, comes in and says, who's the 7 of you that have finished everything this morning? And I rose my hand, 6 others did. She says, all right, you guys can leave until 1 o'clock. The rest of you have to take some extra training. But hey, you guys take all your books with you because we're going to give you a lot more this afternoon. It'd be easier if you didn't have to carry those books. Boom. Grab my books, I'm gone. I come back at 1 o'clock, everybody's sitting there, and we have no instructor. 20 minutes after 1, the instructor finally walks in, and he looks all torqued off and everything. Doesn't say hello, doesn't say I'm sorry, I was tied up with the state police, nothing. Opens up, grab the black book, turn to page 12, we're talking about human or hazardous materials. And I'm thinking, oh shoot, I don't have a black book. I hope somebody will say something, because I kind of want to be incognito, which is kind of hard for me. But nobody rose their hand, I don't have a book, so I rose my hand. What? We were told to take our book to our room. How many of you don't have your book? Guess how many people rose their hand? 7. Looks like 7 of you don't know how to follow instructions. Get your blank to your room, get the book, you can catch up later. 6 of those dudes ran out of the room. I walked up to the front, and I said, sir, I'm not staying in your hotel. So it's going to take me 20 minutes each way. If you could loan me a book. Dudes, I could see it coming. You ever notice when somebody's walking by you and you know they're going to give you the shoulder? Yep. He was coming and just, had all the room in the world. But boom, right into my shoulder to knock me out of the way, walked 10 foot and threw a book at me. Yeah. I wish he hadn't have done that, because it had to go in the report. He didn't get fired, but the president of that company, the chairman of the board, sat at the end of the table in tears during my report, and he said, I did not build this company on these principles. How did we get here? And I said, sir, because people in your company don't understand the culture of your company. We've got to get back on track with your culture. Anyway, FYI, do your instructors like drivers? Do they like instructing? I'm all about one instructor. It's one of those ownership things again. If you have one orientation instructor, they typically enjoy teaching class, and they will take pride in it, and it streamlines the whole process. I'm all about driver dispatchers, fleet managers, meeting their drivers in orientation. First off, talking to them on Thursday, maybe even talking to them, meeting them in the lobby, and taking them to class after buying them a cup of coffee, treating them with respect and appreciating. See, folks, it's a two-way street. It's creating connection between the dispatcher and the driver to the dispatcher. See, one reason they think poorly of each other and treat each other poorly is they don't know each other. But what we find is when we start building that relationship, they treat each other better. So show specific and genuine appreciation to one driver per day that did something wonderful yesterday. That's how you get more people to do the great things that you need them to do. You show appreciation when they do it. You heard me say that 75% of turnover rate happens in the first 90 days of employment. What I did at CFI, guys, I don't worry about and this continues in my life today, I don't worry about what other people will do or don't do. I worry about what I can do. I take ownership, responsibility, and accountability for my actions and the results that I get out of them. Instead of sitting back and placing the blame, making excuses, or living in denial, I could have done anything about it. So what I did is I said, you know what, I can't get the rest of the company to make proactive contacts, but they will sure help if we escalate something to them. So I had my recruiters contact their drivers, meet them in orientation, contact them 30 days after orientation, again at 60 days, and again at 90 days. And in doing that, we proactively addressed issues before they became turnover and lowered our turnover rate by 27%. So that's how now you could grow it huge by having different departments get involved in it and such. But what we're talking about is strategic touch points of the right people contacting the drivers at the right time, identifying issues, and then come up, sir. And identifying the issues, addressing them, and then proactively reducing turnover. If you wait until the driver says that he's going to quit to start addressing it, it's already too late. I hope that you found that very, very helpful to you. Thank you.